Whoops. Hola community, welcome to Blender Today live 222. We hit the 222s. We have this week updates in uh, many areas. We have EEVEE Next. It's been updated this week. We have some user interface, at least is my favorite part of today's show. And we have a birthday. Yes. So today is Ton's birthday. So if you have a Twitter account, maybe go say hi, or yeah, if you, well, it's also on Mastodon. So if you're on Mastodon, go check it out. By the way, Blender is also on Mastodon. If you find Blender on Mastodon.social, like the official account, that's us. Like we still manage that one, and we made it a few years ago, but it hasn't been super active. It was mainly like a mirror, but now it's actually active. So see you there. Another announcement that we have this week is that Graphical is sunsetting. Do you know what Graphical is? It's a website that we made maybe 2005, so 18 years ago. It was a, like, you know, builder.blender.org, where you go and get new builds of experimental changes in Blender. Well, the same concept, but we made it 18 years ago with Daniel Salazar with Sancudo, and then it went into a few iterations, but basically it was where you could get free and open source software related to graphics. That's why it was called Graphical. Like anybody could share their own builds. Nowadays, Blender has its own website for that. You are familiar with it, builder.blender.org. There is branches, there is patches. There is a, like, even now with the new GT website, you can even tell it to like build directly from there, even patches that are not ready for like Blender dailies. So there wasn't really a need. And also it got a bit, how to say it? It's not really safe to be sharing binaries online, right? And downloading them that they're not signed or anything. And it's really hard to keep track of what's going on here, what people were sharing. So better to just not have it anymore. So goodbye, Graphical. The next updates, actually all the updates are related to Blender. We don't have that many this week because you know what's happening. When is it? So today is 20. All right, next week. Do you know what happens next week? Next week? Well, it's next week. Actually, someone here in the chat was asking about Blender 3.5 release date as a question mark. So did you know that you can actually find out about the Blender releases in general by yourself, and it's updated like by the developers. So you can go to projects.blender.org. Here in the sidebar, you can see all the active releases and the current one and the upcoming ones. Actually, this week on tomorrow, there will be new LTS releases, if I'm not wrong. And in 3.5, you can click there and see that the release date is planned for 29th of March. But that's on a Wednesday, and we're not doing releases on Wednesdays anymore, so it might be even on the 28th. I have to check with the developers, but basically you have a whole week to freak out. This leads me to the announcement that next week, on Monday, two things. One, we have a daylight saving change here in in Europe, in this part of Europe, so everything is going to be 1 hour earlier. However, because of the release, I'm not going to be doing a live stream because you're going to see today that there's not so many changes in Blender, and also I'm going to be busy making the release notes page. So you're actually going to get an extra cool Blender Today in the shape of a blog post on blender.org. And we're going to meet it again on the one after, which is already the 3rd of April. How, when, how, where, how did it happen? So yeah, just a heads up. Without further ado, I think we are in a good shape to start to see what is new in Blender today, as of today. So the first change, so as always, we go alphabetically. So the first change, by the way, if you have questions, you can enter blender.today, the community or Blender community website, and you're going to see the blog post that the post that I did, Blender Today Live 222, and that should give you a bit of a spoiler alert of everything that is new. I'm not going to cover everything, but you can see that there is 168 commits this last week, of which 60 are fixes and 43 were cleanups. A lot of cleaning up, spring cleanup. Okay, next. Or first, what is new in Blender today? The first thing that is new is that cycles, there's this change in cycles. In cycles, there it says adjust resolution divider to achieve a more usable viewport. What does it mean? Well, if you look at the definition, the description here, it seems to be an internal change. But the noticeable differences is that users with slow hardware and a large pixel size. So when you tell cycles to start with a large pixel size, like to show you the render with a higher size. So basically you wait for the image to be a bit more ready before seeing any change. Or if there is a slow hardware and a low resolution screen, you may observe a higher resolution viewport during navigation. So things should look sharper, even if you are using a slow hardware and a low resolution screen. I don't know what does it mean by low resolution. Like, what is low resolution nowadays? Is it 720p? Is it 800 by 600? 1024, 768. So yeah, basically the scene is going to be more readable. I'm curious about how does it affect like other hardware as well. Like, is it the window being small the same concept, or is like the screen resolution? Again, the other change: users with slow hardware and a low pixel size and a high resolution screen may observe a lower resolution viewport during navigation, providing a more responsive viewport during navigation. So yeah, I have to see this in action though. Lower than 1080p is considered low resolution. Well, Blender recommends a 1080p screen, at least in the last few releases. Right, so that's it for cycles. Let me know if you actually notice any difference. Switching topics into this C, letter E for EEVEE Next. EEVEE Next is still under development, is still alpha, is still like experimental, but it's cool to see that they're actually working on stuff. For example, Miguel Pozo is working on a debug pass to debug the Iranian's cache for global illumination implementation development. Nice. Clement is adding spherical harmonics library for Iranian's caching. Nice. And Clement also implemented the third pipeline, which decouples the lighting from the material shaders, making them lighter, less expensive, and faster to compile. Nice. EEVEE Next is moving forward. Next. The file browser user interface. Okay, here's where the user interface changes start. They're a bit spread all over, but this one is a huge improvement in my workflow, at least. File browser. You know how in the file browser, if you have a file browser open and you want to drag and drop a video to the sequencer, for example, and you're using list view, where you actually have the list. Let me see if by the way, I'm trying to compile Blender here on the build bot. It's been 1 hour, so soon we're gonna get a new build, and hopefully it's one that is gonna be available for everybody, but it's still not ready. Let's hope it finishes before the end of the show, so I can actually show you what these changes. Actually, I do have a build. When was this change? Last week. Yeah, okay. So I should be able to see this change. Basically, instead of having to drag the files from the icons to drag and drop, for example, a video from the file browser into the sequence editor, for example. Yeah, now you can drag it from the name as well. Isn't it great? So you're not limited to like 16 pixels by 16. Now you can actually drag from the name. Downside is that for box select, you may end up, with click dragging, and then you're actually dragging the file. So for box select, I would recommend that you use the shortcut B for box select, because yeah, that's gonna make it harder otherwise. So let's see. Do we have a, yeah, we have a shading editor, although the shading editor I think by default is showing not list view. But if we add a list view, now you can click and drag, although this is an old file. Oh, it's an old build. Okay, but yeah, you should be able to click and drag from the names. I thought I had a newer build. The next change. Okay, so yeah, this change actually follows the outliner. The hitbox for the dragging is the width of the string and the full row height. Actually, it would be better to have a full width of the row, not the string. So if you have a file name that is like 3 letters long, I still want to click select from the rest. And here Julian is actually asking for feedback from the community. So give feedback, please. Let's see, it's still compiling. Trying to, because I wanna test it in real life. That was F for file browser. Let's talk about, well, this is just an announcement from the related change of a few weeks ago regarding OpenImageIO and Blender now using relying more on the OpenImageIO library for loading and saving images, which is good for so many reasons. Just making Blender a bit more generic in the way it handles file images loading and saving, but also more less differences between EEVEE and cycles or with other software. So yeah, this change implements OpenImageIO support APIs, which makes it again more generic ways of accessing. And speaking of generic, there is a patch in being worked on, by the way. It's work in progress, but it's implementing, and it's a spoiler alert, it's implementing copy and paste. At the moment, only for Windows, but copy and paste of images. So imagine you hit render and then copy, Ctrl C, and then go to GIMP, Ctrl V. And yes, there is on DevTalk, there is a thread, I think, where Harley was asking for feedback. So testing wanted for Windows Clipboard. So yeah, maybe he had already got all the feedback he needed, but always the more feedback received, the better. So go have a look to the patch. You basically need to just search for copy/paste on projects.blender.org, and then, or just go to DevTalk and look for the testing wanted for Windows Clipboard copy paste. You can download the build and test it yourself. Maybe try different software. Try, I don't know, Photoshop or Affinity or Krita or GIMP or other software. All right, next, micro, tiny little optimization for the measure tool. So measuring should be tiny bit faster, but you know what else? What is actually much faster this week is mesh related changes. Mesh related. So what do I mean by mesh related? Modeling, geometry nodes, or in this case, extraction of UV maps. So in this test, using geometry nodes to create 2 UV maps on a mesh with 1 million quads on a good CPU, multi-thread CPU. It's about 3 times faster in average to extract UV maps, and the minimum is at least 2.5 times faster. That's actually huge. So, well, yeah. Somewhat surprisingly, multi-threading the copying into the vertex buffer provides a good speed up. So, nice. 2 or 3 times faster for UV extractions. What else is faster this week? This change by Tuan makes it so mesh position copying is now, it uses less memory and improves performance. And another change related to UV maps is the optimization of bmesh to mesh conversion, which on a 1 million face mesh with 3 UV maps, this change improved the conversion time to about 75% faster, says Hans, from 174 milliseconds to 99 milliseconds. It's cool that they measured it in milliseconds, because it means it's like gets closer to real time to do all these changes. It's always good, always good. The next change, so there's all optimizations in meshes. Yeah. Oh, nodes. First implementation, Eric worked on SDF volume nodes milestone number 1. Add the initial support for SDF volume creation and manipulation. SDF volume is Blender's name of an OpenVDB grid of type level set. See the discussion about naming in this task from 2021. So how to deal with multiple volume grids in geometry. So yeah, the new nodes are mesh to SDF volume, points to SDF volume, mean filter SDF volume, offset SDF volume, and SDF volume sphere. Wow, nice. What else? For now, an experimental option, new volume nodes, needs to be enabled in the Blender preferences for the nodes to be visible. So it is experimental still. It is in there, but experimental. In which case would you use this stuff, like OpenVDB, like in making or importing or transforming? So you can convert a mesh to an SDF volume. You can convert points to an SDF. You can apply filters, and you can apply offsets and create volumes in the shape of a sphere. Very specific. Nice. I want to see things. Maybe I haven't been on Twitter on #B3D today, so maybe I'm missing out some of the fun. Is anybody here in the chat, have you people used it already? Next. Oh, we are already in the letter P for PLY. Ply. More performance improvements. Oh, so yeah, actually, this one is super nice because, as you know, in not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, a group of students, I believe, implemented the PLY importer-exporter in C++. So it went from Python implementation into C++, which makes it super much faster and so much better, and it's built in, and it's amazing. This change by Aras makes the importer. Okay, now let's go first with the importer. So this is so good. If you're into the importing exporter, like I don't know, if you're a fan of import export scripts and stuff, this is like a masterclass of making importer exporters. For example, the importer, the new importer, was assuming a few too many things that maybe it's not common in many, like in most files that you're testing, but you can tell here that Ares, by experience, knows that some files can be weird. Some files can assume can have the colors as floats or the positions sometimes as doubles instead of floats, and yeah, so you have to account for that. Then face elements, the previous version of this importer was assuming that the face element is always just a single vertex indices property, but some files have some arbitrary properties per face. Then some changes for the binary importer and the ASCII imported as well, like assuming things, because when you're testing, you usually try to test with different types of files, but yeah, you can tell here that it's just you know, the experience, the huge experience that Ares has with this importing exporting business. It's huge, and also not only that, but at the same time managed to make it faster, between 2 and 4 times faster to import PLY files. So yeah, if you're into that business, go check the commits and go look at the commits, because like the implementation, because I bet there is a lot to learn from this, from having someone with so much experience look at the code and improve it. The same for the exporter. The exporter now is about twice as fast, and in some cases even faster. Like the binary export of the Stanford Lucy 3D scan went from 13 seconds to 5 seconds. So not bad. So cool. It is so nice. Like it's a huge benefit of working in open source in general, is that you can get your code improved by people with huge experience, and you learn so much by looking at what other people do in the same way that in the end the result for the users might be the same, maybe more stable, more robust, faster, but in the end you're still exporting. You're performing the same action, you're exporting something or importing, but you can do it so much better if you know exactly, or if you know how things go, or what things can go wrong. The next change is in the Python API. It's an implementation of the AOVs for removing. Yeah, so it's a new implement view layers AOV remove by adding a new RNA function to call the internal operator, Blender kernel operator. And I'm not wearing my glasses. That's really bad. People, if you're not wearing your glasses, please wear them. Okay. Next. Oh, speaking of API, a refactor. It can't find the change. Interesting. So 500, that's not a 404, that's a 500. Let's see if it now loads. Maybe it's crashing for some reason. Yeah. The DPI factor, or DPI FAC fact, got renamed. So yeah, it never had anything to do with dots per inch really, and it can be a bit confusing. So now it's a scale factor and a more readable name. It's only an internal change, but if you happen to have for some reason an add-on that uses the DPI property, you need to rename it. The next, yay, the build, it succeeded. Let's see. Is it available? Windows Alpha, yes. Okay, so everybody, there is a new build available for this case for Windows. So maybe I managed to cover some of the changes and show it to you actually. All right, the next improvement, it's related to user interface, and it's just making things a bit more clean. Basically, Blender or Cycles, no, Blender, the subdivision modifier would tell you about, it would basically just tell you like, hey, if you're using CPU plus GPU, shows you a message, which is nice. That shows you a message because you can lower the performance. You're using both CPU and GPU for rendering. So it's not really recommended. You can use it, but sometimes it gets things slower, right? Because GPUs can be so much faster than a CPU that maybe sometimes a piece of the render is still waiting for the CPU to finish while the GPU is just sleeping because the rest of the render was faster to do. But it was also showing a message when you were using GPU subdivision by itself, like just alone, which is not very useful because it's always using GPU subdivision now. It's just the normal, the new normal. So yeah. Okay. The next change has to do with user interface. The open recent list is now extended from 10 to 20. So yeah, when you open the recent, or like go to file, open recent, the list was only 10. That's super low. Why? It's just a text file. Why would it be so? I think maybe this is from back in the days when the list, the menu list was could get too long and then it wouldn't fit on the screen anymore. Maybe back in the 800 by 600 or 1024 by 768 days. So this has been upped to 20, and I think we could even do with more, but I think 20 is still readable. It should fit in most screens. So you should have a good size with that. In the video sequence editor, the updates of a text strip, when you change the text in a text strip, it was waiting for you to press enter and then it would update the text. Now Blender will update it on every time you type something. Nice. I don't think it well, if you notice any slowdown, it shouldn't slow down things just because every time you type something it updates. Because the property that it's updating is text edit update, so it's very localized, so it shouldn't. But just to be sure, if you notice anything weird or if things get a bit slow, let us know. All right, I finished downloading the newest Blender, and as Alkali says in the chat, it's the smell of Blender just compiled in the morning. It's morning somewhere. Okay, so Blender is opening. Let's see. The changes of this week are some of the changes that the community have been waiting for ever. And it is one, you can see it. Basically, the text is now aligned towards the content. So the panels are here and the text is actually looking towards the panel. And if you have the sidebar on the other side, for example, if you have flip region, if you have the sidebar on the other side, the text is pointing always towards the content. So when you actually try to read it in this direction, you're always facing the content and the panels. So it makes sense. Then one thing you may notice if you use a lot of add-ons is that the tabs no longer become unreadable. And I actually made a video about that on Twitter, on the BlenderToday account on Twitter, because it is that big of a deal. Go away, Elon, here. Yeah, so this is the change. Before, after. Yep, now you can actually scroll on the sidebar tab. So this change was done by someone from the community, actually, by Guillermo. Guiche is his nickname. Someone had to go and tackle, and it didn't. Maybe why wasn't this done before? I think core developers would probably prefer to rewrite the tab system so it's more so it's done or it uses a more generic tab system. For example, we never had that issue with these tabs in here on the properties editor. We never had that issue. So the issue was only in these tabs. And if you've ever themed Blender, you know that there is like two kinds of tabs. In the theming options, there is in user interface, there is the tab element, which affects some tabs, like the ones here at the bottom and the ones here at the top, which also they don't shrink. So it was working for some tabs. However, the other tabs, the ones that are on the sidebar, are a different kind of widget. So maybe a core developer would prefer to rewrite the entire tab system to use this system. However, it can take a lot of time to do that, and things can break, and time is better spent doing some other more important fixes. So it is good that these kind of band-aids are here. Okay, yeah, we could have like an indicator maybe that you are scrolling out of view. Blender could show a different cursor. There are ways in how this could be improved, but this matches the same behavior that we have here. So now that we have this in place, the indicators, so telling you that there is more tabs hidden, can happen in a separate batch. So it is fantastic. So nice. All right, cool. So I hope this makes a lot of people happy, because every other live stream we will get people asking about this, and I wouldn't know what to answer. But now I know it's fixed in Blender 3.6. Yay. Okay, change of topics, and that's it. Actually, that's everything this week. So 2 changes in the tabs. Let's see what is if there are any questions in the list of questions in Blender today. So I'm gonna open this. In the meantime, I'm gonna serve some mate. Go to the list down here. In the meantime, how many questions there are? There is 9 comments. So let's try to answer them. Let's go from the top. The ones with the most votes. Although I've seen people voting themselves with other accounts with the same IPs. Why? I usually try to answer everything. You don't have to go through like loops and hoops and make fake accounts and stuff. Hey, Illustrator is here. How are ya? How's life? It's good. Resla, I think Pablo was there but he was busy. Busy where? Resla, you came to the Blender Institute, really? All right, next. Next now, first question. Hi Pablo, hope you are well, says Steve, which is a supporter of the Blender Studio, has 2 Blender Development Fund badges, and also supported Sprite Open Movie. Okay, so hi Pablo, I hope you're well. I hope you too. I had a question that some people have asked me a few times and honestly don't know the answer to. Is there a reason Blender must use its own file browser, and why isn't it able to use a native OS file browser as an option? The main reason was that it was first implemented as such, because that way you can make it look the same across all operating systems, and you can have your own options when, for example, when you want to import something, you can have the UI here, you can have your own thumbnails, you really have basically total control on this. The downside is that you have to reinvent the wheel. You have to implement everything every time. So also when you want to append something, right? Say I want to file append, and then I go to a file. Here I am inside of the file, and I can see all the materials and the cameras and the objects, and this UI, it's the same as this UI. So file, browsing inside of a blend file and browsing inside of my operating system, it's the same, which I see it as a plus, because blend files are basically just like folders in this case. If you have your own operating, like if I'm using here I mean, not to even say how bad some operating systems implement their own file browsers. Like on Linux, you have a whole variety of nice file browsers and not so nice file browsers, but at least you have the choice. Windows is very particular with its own. Mac OS also, so I think it has its up and downs to use its own. But mainly is the fact that when you append, when you link, when you browse inside of a blend file, looks the same as browsing your own system in Blender. And yeah, NubNubBud actually replied something like that, which also is leaving a question that goes as follows. Oi, Pablo, just a couple questions this week. First, a pull request. HIP RT is coming along, really nice. Can we expect a branch or inclusion for the 3.6 release? AMD did advertise it, and getting it in a release would be hugely helpful because Blender Open Data will show the performance and with any luck could increase competition in the GPU market. Blender is popular workstation benchmark now. These things matter. I know. Have you, like, with the Open Data website, I've seen it. I've seen, or even in general, the Blender itself as a benchmark is being used more and more on YouTube for like CPUs. I even read somewhere that the European Union is using cycles or Blender renders to calculate some sort of like carbon emissions stuff, like or like power, electricity, something like that. I'm not sure if that is true, but if that's true, that's kind of sick. A Blender is being used for that. So yeah, the like for hardware. So how much carbon emissions do your hardware does on a render, on a benchmark render, on your Blender benchmark, which is amazing. If true, I'm not sure. If you find anything related to this, link please. So yeah, there is a work in progress. I have no idea. That's so cool. So I guess it's up to them. How far is this? 2 weeks ago. Brecht requested changes 1 hour ago. So okay, so from the Blender side, Brecht is on top of it. So I think it's up to them. It's hard to tell if this is for 3.6, but I would assume it is, right? Because, well, I would assume. I don't know. It's AMD is implementing it, so fingers crossed, right? We can't do much on our side, but it's, well, we can, and Brecht is doing it, which is just being on top of it and giving feedback and asking for changes. So yeah. However, there is a change here. It feels like this is likely to break compatibility on new hardware or compilers, or give excessive memory usage on older hardware. So I'm not sure that we should ship it like this. Ouch. This was 2 hours ago. Yeah, follow this thread. They know much more than I didn't even know it was being worked on. So nice though to see. Also, have you submitted anything to Punisher render challenges? No, I haven't. One just finished, but thousands of Blender users submit to them every time. As example, if not, I think you'll love it. It is sort of like a bi-yearly open movie project. It's great to test the usability of the new features with, and because it's only a 4-10 second shot, it's not hugely time consuming either. No, I actually didn't know which one. Oh, it's the people running and walking, and yes, I remember this. But is it really like an open movie project? Is it like people provide the blend file, the source files for their shots? Hey, it's Ishi Geek. It's amazing. It's a group community work. But yeah, it looks fun. I didn't know about this. I saw it somewhere, but I didn't. 13 million views. Is it sharing the revenue with the artists that are actually making this happen? Toby asks, it would be great to have a tooltip in the asset browser for names that don't fit into the line. Hi, by the way, Toby. From the office. It would be great to have a tooltip in the asset browser for names that don't fit into the line underneath the preview when hovering with the mouse. Sometimes it's hard to judge from the preview alone. Isn't that the case already? No, so then we should definitely add that. Yeah. Yep, it's not the case. We should. I mean, you can always press N and see the full name, but we should have a tooltip here. Shouldn't be too hard to do either. Absolutely. At least with the basics. I bet people watching, there's someone from the community. It's maybe a good first issue task. But yeah, it would be great. I'm all in for that. And we already have that in the file browser. Oh, no, we don't. Not even in, no. Interesting. Okay, next. The Blender 40 says, Hola Pablo, I insist that you talk to the Blender developers to make the sculpt feature use two brush tools at the same time. For example, draw brush from add subtract, brush category, and draw face sets brush at the same time. And more about loop cut in edit mode for surface object. And about open moonray for Blender. Assigned by drawn face sets with drawn face sets brush. How many requests are we talking? So, okay. Number one, two brush tools at the same time. Yeah, the UI for this can be tricky because some tools are compatible, but some are not. Some have a different kind of like behavior, right? A mesh filter you click and drag, whereas a brush tool you paint on. So not all tools are compatible. I think the UI needs some work on that area and some really good thinking. So I would recommend that you make a proposal on right-click select, explaining how do you imagine this to work. So I have a hard time picturing two tools working at the same time. I can imagine painting like colors and sculpting, like just deforming the mesh, maybe being compatible, but some tools are not compatible at all. And next, open, Moonray renderer from DreamWorks. Blender native renderer. I imagine, I understand the excitement when you see like, oh my god, this company made something open source, we should use it. Or Blender should have it. And it should be the target for Blender 4.0. I think that's a bit pushing it. Like Blender 4.0 really starts development in like May, in 2 months. And implementing another render engine natively, it's really not an easy task. And also, look at this. They made it open source, but there is one commit. The whole branch, the whole project has one commit 5 days ago when they made it open source. So it's clearly not being developed open source. It is, the source is available, source code is available, but it's not being developed open source. If you go to projects.blender.org, Blender, you can tell that it's being developed in the open, because you see that there is commits like minutes ago, hours ago. There is action there, whereas this is not. So yeah, I think the best way to go about this is to make sure that Blender Cycles is compatible with USD, like Hydra. That is a Hydra delegate, and then just connect with other engines via that way. But yeah, just saying like Blender for 4.0 should have a new renderer just because it happens to be open source. It's not, yeah, not easy to happen. And hey, actually we have Jeroen, a developer, actually answering this. Oh yeah, another huge one. It seems that the DreamWorks render engine is so far only available for Linux builds on CentOS. So like Red Hat compatible CentOS. And only Linux. Imagine the amount of people that have access to that. Yeah. Well, everybody has access to that if they want to. But yeah, the largest user base is on Windows, and also macOS is the second largest user base the Blender has, and it's important to support everything. Okay, next. Krantis, speaking about UX. Hi Krantis, how are you? How's your weekend? The object picker will work across multiple windows. Oh, actually there was a patch about that. It was being worked on by Hurley, I believe. So it's being looked at, I think. Hi Pablo, says David. I want to know why Bone has all layer systems. Also, when will we get Gooseberry or Agent 327 movies? So, why does the Blender Bone system has the all layer system? Well, because it's like changing the Blender like layer system to collections was already a huge amount of work. So that was done in one go, so basically switching everything to collections. But for the bones themselves, it wasn't decided because it is a lot more complicated, because you have protected layers, for example. And yeah, they required a lot more thinking, and it wasn't really necessary like as a Blender 2.8 like core feature. The whole animation system needs to be rethought. Also, the animation system was supposed to be revamped for Animation 2020, remember? But it didn't happen. As you may have heard, there were some things happening on 2020. The animation module, though, has picked up a lot of speed and action, and members that are working on it, developers from Blender itself, like Severance taking the lead of the module, plus people from the industry, plus developers that are looking into animation and rigging for the Animation 2025 project. So you can expect changes in the future. If you want to learn about that, you can go to code.blender.org and look into the animation, the future of character animation. And then here, maybe there is something about layers. Yeah, we also want to move away from the old numerical bone layers and have named bone collections instead. So as you can see, people are thinking about it. It's going to take a while. Also, Gooseberry and Agent 327 movies. Well, Agent 327 is not going to be made by Blender. That's for sure, because the rights for the Agent 327, Blender, for Blender, like I'm just Agent 327 barber shop, just a heads up. This open movie short film from 25 years ago, 2017, Even though it's a Blender Open Movie project, the IP, the idea, the intellectual property is not made by Blender. It's based on a Dutch comic book. Blender no longer have the rights for this. It's now someone else's project. So if they make something, it's not gonna be made by Blender. So just a heads up. So yeah, no, it's not gonna happen. And the H327 by Blender Institute, Blender Studio, Blender Foundation. Gooseberry, though, on the other hand, it's not very likely to happen anytime soon either. Unfortunately, there was an attempt to have a go at Cosmos Laundromat's second episode, but it didn't work out. That was some years ago, and there was just also too many things going on in the studio, in Blender itself, so it didn't happen. But that concept, though, the Gooseberry project, it is open source and open content, so everybody can actually pick up the idea, the IP of Cosmos Laundromat and just do whatever you want with it. The last question is by Paul Pillao. Says, "Hi Pablo, I guess since one of the last BlenderTodays, Julian mentioned in a forum post that essentials might be reduced to only geometry nodes groups. So no base meshes or materials shipped with Blender essential bundles after all." No. This was only for the 3.5 release. So Blender 3.5 only ships with geometry nodes, node groups. However, the Essentials bundle is likely going to get more, well, maybe there is now a thread where it says the opposite, but the Essentials will be included, but the inclusion of base meshes and primitive meshes will be kept to an absolute minimum. That's why the base mesh will become a separate download. Yeah, there is the idea that it will be a separate bundle, but I would argue against that, and I would like to see Blender at least shipping with some basics. So like a head, like a human head, not even male and female, just like a human basic head with a nose, with ears, and the basics, just so you can start sculpting. That is likely going to it's going to add less than a kilobyte of weight to Blender if you compress it and everything. So I think some kind of basic assets should be part of Blender. Although for more advanced stuff, like more unique things, like I don't know, cars or a full-on highly detailed human, male, female kid, maybe it could be included, but it shouldn't come with Blender because you don't want to download a gigabyte every time, right? Blender should stay as lean and slim as possible. And that's it. Those are all the questions, I think. There's two more questions actually that appear just now. No, this is one question was a reply. And Puffington says, "Hey Pablo, is there a way to save default settings for import-export options for FBX and OBJ?" I think so. I think there is. There is, for example, if I import OBJ, yeah, there is. Operator presets. Just need to add a preset and it's gonna save these settings as your presets. It's not gonna be set as default though. Or maybe it is. I don't have presets to test, but please test it. You can save presets, but I don't know if you can set one as default. Maybe that would be a nice addition to do for any presets in general. But the preset system in Blender is so bad. It's just a Python file. It's a list of files defined in Python. So you can't know when a setting change. So the preset is no longer valid. So bad. But yeah, FBX, I don't know if FBX has that, but it should. I wish FBX would become... I don't even have FBX enabled here. Huh. It's that much I use it. Maybe I can check. Add-on FBX. I don't use FBX, so I have it disabled. Which you should do the same if you don't use it. Blender is gonna launch a bit faster. The less add-ons that you have enabled, the faster you open Blender. So FBX also has operator presets. So yeah, you should be able to have the same. And that is all actually. I think so, yeah. In the chat, Video TT says, Pablo, do you think Blender always stays in one version or will it be a pro version? I would definitely vote against Blender having a pro version and a no pro version. Of course, every version is going to be free and open source because that's a Blender license. But you could argue that you could make a Blender Lite and a Blender full version, but no, that's a terrible idea. Blender should work maybe with the Blender apps. You know, you can rip out stuff from Blender and have a simpler UI. I don't know if you can hear the drilling, but someone started drilling, I think. Yeah. All right, I think it's time to start wrapping up Blender. Peter, Blender, do you have any questions for us, Pablo? Oh my gosh. This... Yeah. That is, you know, when they say, like, everybody asks Blender this, Blender that, but nobody asks how is Blender. A questions for you. Well, my questions for you is that what is what you are looking forward the most for Blender 4.0? As in, do you think there is anything in Blender that needs complete overhaul? I have a few. Textures, texture nodes, for sure. Particle system, for sure. Simulations. I'm actually giving all the options out there. But something that is not in Blender yet, you know, like before geometry nodes, nobody was asking for geometry. Well, not many people were asking for geometry nodes, right? There were add-ons doing that kind of stuff already. So what? Physics simulation. Yeah, somebody saying physics simulation. Character animations. Geometry nodes, physics nodes, physics. Okay, so I'm looking at the chat, by the way. Simulation, probably yes. Yeah. Vertex painting in multi-res. Yeah. Neural radiance fields. Nerf. Geometry nodes, fire, smoke, and EEVEE SSGI. I asked about EEVEE SSGI, Clement, about for EEVEE Next, and apparently all the implementations, they all have their issues. And it's probably better to just do it properly, not screen space, but actually proper GI, and just go that way, you know? The Lumen way. Physics simulations are so slow. I know. What's new? I just want batch renamed to empty object. What? Wait. You can't batch rename empty object? What do you mean? Of course you can. 1, 2, 3. All these objects. Shift F2, was it? I know. That's changing the shortcut. Edit, batch, Control F2. There you go. Control F2. So the selected objects, instead of being empty 1 or 2, I'm gonna replace the word empty with, like in Spanish, which is vacío. And it works. What do you mean it doesn't work? Anyways, I'm approaching well, actually I'm 5 minutes past the length that is even sometimes too long for some people. But I hope you had fun. I have fun, and I try to make it 1 hour just to be more concise. Sometimes we don't have as many features in Blender the current week, but there is still a lot to do and to hang out with the community, which is the most important part. Speaking of hanging out, I'm not gonna be hanging out with you next week, Monday. I'm not gonna be hanging out with anyone on Monday because I will be like knee deep in the release notes for Blender 3.5, which is coming out next week. Yes, next week. Already 28, 29. And the next BlenderToday live show is gonna be in April. Where did the year go already? I hope you had fun too this week. I hope you had a nice weekend, and I hope you're looking forward to this week to have fun, to play with the new features in Blender. How do you feel? Do you have to accommodate yourself to read the tab labels like this direction, this direction? I know it's there is reasoning on why flipping the tab labels, but I think there will still be some of a like muscle memory of reading this way or this way. I think it makes much more sense this way, like how it is right now, but I don't think we need a setting in the preferences for that. It would be a bit much, but I wonder how you are adapting to it. So without further ado, I think we are going to be closing this show, and I want to thank you for hanging out with me this week. I will see you not next week, but the week after. Or maybe I do. Maybe we'll make a video. We still have to make a video about Blender 3.5. Gee. Who could make the video with only 1 week notice? I could make something, but all right. I will see you not next week, but the week after for another episode of BlenderToday Live. And now I don't know how to warn you about what your ear holds, because in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It wasn't too loud. I hope you have a great week. I will see you again in 2 weeks' time for another episode of BlenderToday Live. Have a fantastic time. Thank you. Grazie. Arigato. Tack. Dankjewel. Dankeschön. Gracias.